Hey, what's up, geeks? Darron here. Now in this video, we're going to cover state management. FYI, we actually have a state management course available in our GeekMODE membership. It's in the description below. You can find the link to our GeekMODE membership there. We also offer a lot of different things outside of that as well. So definitely check that out. Now, the reason I'm covering state management is because Tiago Navato, he contacted me on our Discord channel, which is also in the description below. So I strongly advise you to follow our Discord channel. Just scroll down to the description, click the link, and become a member. Because Tiago reached out to me on our Discord and he asked me to cover the topic we're covering today, and that is state management, how to use React hooks, how to use context, and how to use Redux, and when to use one over the other. Now, our Discord is the best way to get in contact with me. Also, we offer contests and giveaways, and also React Native news as well within our Discord, so make sure you check that out. But anyways, yes, in this video, I'm going to go ahead and give you a brief overview of how state management works with these three different components and when you should use them. So that's enough of me, and let's just get into it. Okay, so right now what you're looking at is our app.js file. If you take a look at our app.js file, you can see that we have a count component. Within the count component, we only have a text that has 0 hard coded. Now, right now our application doesn't do anything. We're going to set that up right now. So first thing we're going to cover is local state management. Local state management is when the state is only available within that parent component and its children. It's not available anywhere else within the application. It's not global, it's only local. So to do that, we're going to bring in our use state function. And when you're using the use state function, it gives you create a variable and a function to actually update the state. So I'm going to go ahead and create const, and I'm going to use the array. And I'm going to use our use state function. All right. Now, as I stated, the first thing you're going to add to your array is the variable. So our variable name is going to be count. And the function that updates the count is going to be set count. And the default value, the initial value, is going to be 0. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to go into my count.js file, and I'm going to create a count property. I'm going to remove 0 from our text. I'm going to pass in count. Now when I'm back in my app.js file, I'm going to go ahead and add that count property, and I'm going to give it the value of count. All right. So you can see nothing's changing on the screen, but just to let you know this is actually working, I'm going to update the initial state to 5. As you can see, now our state is updated to 5. Now I'm going to give you an idea, let you see. I'm going to console log our count just so you can get an idea of how it's working in the background. Save this, and I'm going to open our debugger. Now, if I take a look, as you can see in our console, we're getting back count. All right. I'm going to go ahead and just update this as well, just so you can get a good look at it. Another look at it to 5 again. We go back to our debugger. You can see the counts now, its value is up to 5. So I'm going to go ahead and do now, I'm going to show you how to update the state of this. We're going to create 2 functions. One function is going to allow us to increment our count. The other function is going to allow us to decrement our count. So I'm going to update this back to 0. I'm going to create a function called const increment count. And I'm going to call our set count function. And I'm going to get our previous state. Now, using the previous state, because we're incrementing it, I'm going to add it I'm gonna, if you can actually put +1 to increment the count. Go ahead and do that right now. So within my increment, I'm gonna add on press and pass in increment count as its value. Now, if I increment the count, you can see it's going up. But then also, there's another way to increment the count. You just add ++ to the previous state. Oh, okay, that doesn't work. Usually that works, but oh well. Also, as you can see, this is a shorthand way to do that. So if I add my curly brackets and return, you see this increments the count as well. So you can write it any way. I just did the shorthand way because we're not doing any additional functionality within this, so there's no reason to add that. So I'm going to do the same thing for our decrement counts. I'm going to say decrement set count. I'm going to get the previous state value. I'm going to say previous state minus 1. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and add this function to our decrement. So I'm going to say onPress decrement count. Now, when I click this button, yes, it goes down. As you can see, there's a problem. We're going into the negatives. That's not what we want to do. So unlike what we did here with the shorthand method, we're actually going to have to add additional functionality. So I'm going to go ahead and say if count is equal to, if count is equal to 0, return false. Okay. As you can see, now it doesn't let us go past 0 again. All right. Now, this is how you handle your state locally. It only exists within your parent component, which is our app.js. Now for context. Now, use context is not meant to it's not even for state management. It's meant to help the prop drilling issue. I'll explain what prop drilling is in a minute. But the only thing you really need to know is that it's not a replacement for state management. It's not even state management. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in the function create context. And I'm going to create a variable called app context. I'm going to set it equal to create context. All right. And I'm going to add some fragments, pass it in. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wrap this entire thing in our context. So I need to add app context. And then also the app context is going to want a value. Oh, it's going to want a provider. So I have to say app context.provider. I'm going to pass in count into our provider. I'm getting this issue with the app context, so 1 second. Okay, so that was because of a typo. Now that we have our app context wrapped around our application, any value that we pass into here is going to be available to all the children components. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and remove what we have right here for count. All right, so I removed our count. What I'm going to go ahead and do now, I'm going to go into my count.js file, and I'm going to import our use context. Now for here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set value equal to use context, and I'm going to actually go back to my app.js, and I'm going to export the app context. I'm going to go ahead and import app context. Make sure that's coming out, so export. Now I'm going to open back up our count.js file, and I'm going to pass in our app context in like this. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just console log, go back here, or remove the count for right now. I'm going to go ahead and console log our value. Now when I go back to our debugger, value is 0 because we're getting our count. So I'm going to go ahead and update this to count, and I'm going to remove what we have here. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead. Now we have a count back to 0 using our context. If I go ahead and increment, as you can see, that value is passed down to all of our children props. Now we've covered use context, and we also covered hooks, using hooks with React Native, specifically our use state hook. Now I'm going to go over Redux. Now, in order for me to cover Redux, I'm going to have to add another library, which is our React Native navigation, just to give you a good idea of how Redux is supposed to be used. Okay, so I went ahead and I skipped ahead. Right now, what you're seeing, navigation has been added to the application. I'm not going to go ahead and I'm not going to worry about adding any icons for navigation, because that's out of scope of the purpose of this video. As you can see, now we have two different screens. We have our bottom tab navigator. Now the thing that I need to add right now, I need to go ahead and add Redux to our application. So we're going to add Redux Toolkit. So I'm going to search for Redux. Here it goes, Redux Toolkit, and getting started. Now to get started with Redux, I'm going to go ahead and copy what I have here. Oh, to an existing app. So add to an existing app. So yarn add toolkit. Okay. All right. Just going to go through all these steps because it's be easier. Okay, so I'm going to copy this command. I believe we should be good. So it says we need to create a store file. So I'm going to copy what we have here. And then within my source directory, I'm going to create a store.js file. So store is basically just like any other store, like a grocery store or an apparel store. Your store allows you to get different items. And that's how Redux works. It has all of the data within your application in a data store. So that's what this store.js file is for. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. Now, as you can see, our store is our reducers. Our reducers is what controls our data. Right now it's empty. We don't have anything in there. So if we keep following along with this tutorial, I'm sure that we're going to add things to our store. Okay, so first thing I'm going to go ahead and do before we do that, I'm going to create a slice. And I'm going to name this the CounterSlice. Ironically, it's exactly like what we're doing here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this file. And I'm going to create, within my source directory, I'm going to create a CounterSlice. I'm going to paste that in. Okay, now just like we saw within our app.js file, you can see the default, our initial state is 0. If you take a look at our store, our CounterSlice, the initial state, the value is 0 as well. So what we went ahead and do first, when we have our CounterSlice, we have to name it. So the name of our CounterSlice is counter. And then the next parameter we pass in is our initial state, which is here. Initial state can have as many properties as you want, but we only have a value for here. And then our reducers. Our reducers are our actions. As you can see, if we go back here, our action, we have a function which is an action. Actions are basically anything, any kind of functionality that takes place within the application. Adding data is an action, subtracting data is an action, liking a post is an action, etc. And Redux, it controls functions, it calls its functions actions. That's what you need to know. And as you can see, we take the state value and we increment it by 1, and we take the state value and we increment it by 0. And I'm going to go ahead and add, well, it's not important for this. You'll understand it's not important for this part, but anyways, we have these actions within our application. I'm going to clean this up as well. So counter, we're going to move actions. I'm going to say actions. They're going to be counter actions reducer is going to be counter reducer. All right, I can remove this right here. Okay, so now that we have our slice, we're going to have to import it into our store. So I'm going to go to our store.js file and I'm going to import counter reducer. Within my reducer, I'm going to add count, and I'm going to set its value to, well, I'll name it counter, and I'm going to set its value to counter reducer. Nice. Now we have to wrap our application into the store. So I'm going to go ahead and within my, I'm going to clean up my app.js. I'm just going to get this out of the way. Remove this. I'm going to remove all this functionality because we just don't need it anymore. need this. I don't need this. And where else? Okay, so this provider. Let's go ahead and remove this context. So view. Okay. And also for our count. Okay, I'll handle that in a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap our application by Redux. So grab my store. So bring in my provider for React Redux. Okay. So import my provider. I'm also going to import store. All right, I'm going to wrap our navigation. Wrap our provider, run our navigation, plug it in. And our provider has a store property. We're going to set its value equal to store. Okay, everything's all good. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to update our count because you see there's nothing returning. So in order for us to get our count value, I'm going to remove what we have here, remove all this context stuff because it's not relevant anymore. Now Redux has its own hooks that we use if we want to get data from the Redux store. In order to do that, we need to we're going to use the hook called use selector from React Redux. Now I'm going to go ahead and get a value. So I'm going to say I'm going to get count. I want to get count from Redux selector. So reselector. So the way I do that is I reference the state. And before I get anything from state, I'm going to console log state. And then I'm going to pass in our state value. Now when I go to my debugger, you can see our state is an object. And our state object, it has the counter with the value of 0. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get our state dot counter dot value, and we're going to get the count value. So we're going to pass that in, count, and the value is 0. All right. So right now you can see that these buttons don't do anything. It doesn't increment or decrement it. So in order to handle that functionality, we have to go to our app.js file within our index right here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring in our counter actions. And I'm also going to import use dispatch. In Redux, when you want to call an action or use it, you have to dispatch an action. And dispatching it is what's going to help it communicate to our Redux store. So within our touchable opacity, I'm going to go ahead and add our onPress property like we did earlier. And I'm going to dispatch. Actually, I don't even need this curly bracket. I'm going to dispatch. I'm getting too far ahead of myself. First, I need to create a variable called dispatch and set its value equal to use dispatch. Now I'm going to call dispatch, and within dispatch, I'm going to call the counter actions, and I'm going to get our increment. our decrement counter function. All right, I'm going to go ahead and copy this functionality and add it to our increment. So I'll say increment counter. Okay, so basically I forgot to call the functions. That's why nothing's happening. So if I go ahead now, as you can see, it's incrementing and it's decrementing, and our value is changing. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn on. Right now I'm using the Google debugger. I want you guys to see the actions being called. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my React Native debugger. I'm going to turn off what we have here. First, disconnect this debugger. Now, when I reload the application, let me see. Okay, now you can see that our counter value is 0, and then once we call our action, our increment action, it goes up. It increments, it goes up in value. Called decrement action, it goes down in value. Now, the purpose of using Redux is that you're able to use your state not only in one component, one parent component, but all over your application. As you can see in this app.index file, this is where we control our actions. We're updating our value here. And if we go to our counter is actually, let me go ahead and do it. Okay, I used the wrong counter. So I'm going to go ahead, copy what we have here. And I'm going to pass in our count. Oh, actually, this is fine. This is fine. Right now, okay, so we're using this in one screen. You can see it's updating. We're not quite done yet. So now our count2.js file. Now we want to get this count, we want it to show on this screen. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna copy what we have here in our count, and I'm gonna go to my index.js file. I'm gonna pass that in right here. And then instead of having count2, I'm just gonna add a colon, and I'm gonna pass in my count, just like that. I'm going to save it. Now you can see the count is 13. And what Redux does, it allows us to add our state to multiple screens. It's not just tied to one screen. As you can see within my app screen, the value 14 is here. And then if I go to my count screen, the value is 14 as well. So when you need to share your state throughout your application, that is when you use Redux. Hey, what's up, geeks? So hopefully you found that helpful. The purpose of this video is meant to give you a good understanding of how to use hooks, use state hook, and then how you're supposed to use context and Redux within your application. Use context is not meant to be a replacement for state management. That's not why it was created. It was created for prop drilling. If you want to learn more about prop drilling, you can go ahead and just Google prop drilling React or React Native, and that should be good enough. Now, if you want to learn more about state management, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, in the GeekMODE membership, there is a state management course that covers all the different types of state management, and you learn how to use that within a complex application. Now, hopefully you found this video helpful. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me on Discord, and I have no problem answering your questions there. But anyways, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.